Well, it's time now for Perspective. Today, the 12th of February, is Red Hand Day, also known as the International Day Against the Use of Child Soldiers. Around the world, tens of thousands of children are members of military organisations, their childhoods swapped for violence, fear and exploitation. And their struggles often don't end if they do manage to return to civilian life. Poverty and disability are rife among former child soldiers. My guest today is Camille Romain, Director General of the French NGO Vision du Monde. Thank you very much for being with us today on France 24. Could you start by telling us how children find themselves involved in armies, in militia groups in the first place?
So, first of all, I just would like to remind a very important point. When we talk about child soldiers, we are talking about boys, but also girls, and sometimes very young people. The main root of this phenomenon is poverty, extreme poverty, and lack of decent conditions for these children, who are tempted by this group and who join them because they lack of the very basic stuff like food or education. So poverty is really the main driver, let's say, that bring children into these groups.
And sometimes these groups target children specifically. It's not just about increasing their numbers, it's about what children can bring to military and paramilitary organizations.
Sure, because these children are used for military purposes, let's say, but they are small and young, let's say. So these children are used for other purposes and other needs of the group. They are required to be cooks. They are required to help the groups and to do some daily and domestic stuff. And sometimes we also can. We are aware that young girls are also required are involved in sexual harassment and sexual abuses.
And how exactly do groups go about recruiting children into their ranks?
The point is that a child soldier joins this group in a very unstable areas, and they go to the family and they do a kind of propaganda, let's say, saying that they will offer to these kids food, a warm bed and protection. So they try to change the mind of the children, but also of the families who are tempted to allow their own kids to join these groups. So they are quite good at communication, let's say, by trying to attract the children.
So what then happens if a family decides they want to bring their child out of the militia, out of the army and back into the family? How hard is that?
It's very hard. I mean, a family, the groups don't want to let the child go for sure. So we sometimes the children manage to escape by themselves. They manage to join back their family, or they manage to join another village. And when peace is back, let's say, in the country, the groups also let free the children. So this is an option for them to recover and to go back to their own communities.
And when these conflicts do sometimes end, people who have been child soldiers often have a very hard time reintegrating back into society. Why is that?
For sure, this we have to keep in mind that these children are victims. They were asked to do things. They have seen very terrible violence, and they have been destroyed, sometimes physically, but also mentally, because of this violence, because of the drugs they are required to take. So these children are totally broken. So we try to help them to recover from all this trauma first, but we also offer them some perspective. We offer them education, but also vocational trainings. And at World Vision, we do believe that every child needs to experience life in all its fullness, and we really want to give hope to these children, to give hope back, so that after this, they can also go back to their own family, and we work on peace and forgiveness, so that no matter what the children had to do, they can go back to their family and be a child again.
And where is this phenomenon of child soldiers most marked? Are there any countries that you're particularly concerned about right now?
The point is that this phenomenon is visible in every long-lasting conflict, I would say, and especially during internal conflict between rebels, armed group, and so on. The figures are terrible, but in Somalia, in DRC, in Nigeria, for instance, we know that there's still a lot of child soldier.
And you talk about rehabilitating these children once they have left these groups. Do you find that you have the cooperation of national governments in your work?
Yeah, I would say that there's a lot of organization and also institutions who are ready to take care of the children. What is the most difficult thing for us is being able to establish this kind of shelters or centers when the conflict is still there. It's because it's very difficult to let people know that this kind of places exist. And also the main important thing for us is the return of peace, let's say, to be able to take care and protect these children.
And it's also true, isn't it, that a lot of child soldiers grow up to become adult members of those same organisations. How do you deal with that when it comes to culpability?
As I said, the children when they were children, were victims, and indeed sometimes the child becomes. Of course, the child becomes an adult, and when they commit terrible actions, when they're adults, they have to be judged as adults. But what we do try at World Vision, we do try to prevent this kind of situation. We do try to tackle the profound roots of the phenomenon to avoid any child to become a child soldier and then an adult former child soldier.
And of course, we are still going through a global pandemic, a pandemic that's exacerbated economic inequalities across the world. Have you found that the pandemic has had an impact on the question of child soldiers?
The fact that the pandemic has a strong impact on economics, on environment, on many things, yes, for sure, it has indirect consequences on the use of child soldier, because we know that this phenomenon is rooted in instability and in poverty, and the pandemic is increasing the poverty and instability in many areas.
Now, today is Red Hand Day, the annual day devoted to raising awareness about this issue. Why is it important, do you think, for people to know about child soldiers and what leads to children becoming recruited into these sorts of groups?
This day is very important because people can have very old images in mind, but this phenomenon is not only still real, but it's also growing. And we really want to raise awareness on the importance of every government to protect their own children, and on the fact also that by tackling the roots of poverty with organizations like World Vision, we can protect these children, and we can bring hope to them and allow them to enjoy life in all its fullness.
Camille Romain, Director General of the French NGO Vision du Monde, thank you very much for speaking to us today on France 24.
Thank you.